Hello, friends. Welcome to Pod Maverick After Dark. This is Kirk Henderson, joined by Josh Bowe. We don't really have a title card for this show because it's not a typical show. It is a NBA Finals preview show. It is Tuesday, June 4th. It's about 10 till 9 p.m. Josh and I are hanging out here. And, before we get this show started, I want to note a couple of things. It is safe to say that we as adults with other jobs did not anticipate the Mavericks making the NBA Finals. I think my aspirations for the season were kind of second round, and this is way back at the beginning of the year. And now you get to our age, and I'm 40, and you're in your early 30s. I can't remember how much.
I'm officially mid-30s.
Mid-30s now. But you get to this point, we each have kids, and things sort of start happening. You got to start planning stuff. Your lives get kind of incrementally more complicated. I'm not ready for this series. For example, I had jury duty today. I get out of jury duty, come home, try to cram 8 hours of work in about 4. My wife reminds me that my son has baseball practice tonight, and this is after him having a basketball game last night and a basketball practice tomorrow night. And it's just summer kind of gets wildly busy. For those who are outside the Dallas area, we've had biblical rain here. And so my son plays Little League Baseball, and they've decided they just won't cancel games. They keep backing them up. So it's over the next 5 days, I have something at least 2 child sporting events every day. And it's so funny in the sense of I'm thinking about the finals, but I'm not really thinking about the finals. My wife asked me, I saw Isaac Harris just tweet. He's like, really, I just can't wait for these finals to get ready and go. And I'm like, I could use another couple of days.
Yeah, let's do another week off. Why not? I like nights off.
But I at the same time, I will say something has flipped in this area. Nobody talks to me about the Mavericks. Nobody in real life. And that includes parents and other stuff. And it's now you got people at the court today during the juror pool. One of the questions the judge asked just to see if we were paying attention is who was excited about the Mavericks making the finals? And we had to be raise our hands for yes versus no. And it's just that sort of stuff has made it in. The Mavericks aren't necessarily DFW's most popular team, but everybody knows they're in the finals now. And this is and I think as the weeks go on, you're going to get to this because it's as part of your thing. But the Mavericks are playing a historically good team. You keep saying this in all of your tweets. You're kind of writing. You've written about it a little bit, and I think the weight of that, particularly if the Mavericks make a dent, is going to start to raise this team's local profile in a big way. It's everybody loves a winner. So we're going to see a bunch of bandwagon Maverick fans if they weren't already on the squad. But, when you got the stars playing too the last several weeks, it's been a different run than the 2022 Western Conference Finals runs. It's just different. And what's odd to me is this one's actually a lot more exciting. I mean, the Sun series was fun, but then getting walloped by the Warriors was not fun. I mean, am I being ridiculous about this? What are you seeing out there?
No, I'm with you. And now that the Mavericks are the only team in town now that the Stars unfortunately exited, so even more people are probably focusing their attention on the Mavericks than before. So yeah, I mean, I always love it's fun to be in an area when a team is doing well in the playoffs because
that's great.
Just people that you haven't talked to about sports in 5 years are suddenly like, hey, have you heard about that Maverick?
Yeah, my mother does this. Yeah. Kirk, did you see that the Mavericks won? Yeah. I'm just woman. Yeah. I have the podcast set up on your iPad. Yeah. Also, we must note that me in particular, because I'm coming from a child's baseball practice, I look terrible, and I plan to shave and get the haircut before the first series. But I am definitely haggard as all get out. So apologize to everyone who has to look at my face meant for radio.
I can look cool too. There's not a lot left, but I can make it look weird. It can get weird. It can get nasty.
I will say, man, it's I didn't listen to podcasts like this, and I don't think this kind of audio was around, but it's really, really cool to hear everyone and their uncle that I like listening to talk about the Mavericks now in a way where it's clear they've spent some time on them. Like the show I'm hearing, like, I don't know if you listen to the All NBA podcast with my friend Adam Matas and Tim Legler. Like
that one's great.
Gosh, they just, and it's like gushing about the basketball. And I think there's a, and we're gonna get to the preview, guys, I swear. I really think the narrative angle from this series is going to burn itself out before the series starts. Like this, nobody. Did you read that Kyrie Irving article that Tim McMahon put out?
I didn't read the Tim McMahon one.
It has some like really thought, like ESPN's put up some graphics about it, but I implore you to go read it, Josh. Like Kyrie stood on like the media version of a firing squad and basically was like, I was a different person then. I've made a lot of mistakes talking about his time in Boston, and I would didn't, for a guy who doesn't really apologize. He just essentially said, I was a different person and I've grown a lot since then. And it's, I don't know. I try not to get overly sentimental, particularly about a guy who, like, I was on the record as of March, like we're talking 16 months ago. I was like, I don't want this guy on my team. I don't want him near the Mavericks. Like, and I
don't think a lot of NBA teams wanted him
on
very
team clearly. And I was dead wrong. And it's so amazing to like hear him speak like this. I just, I'll probably send it to you. I almost wanted the chat to aggregate it, but I don't really like doing aggregation this time of year. But
do you think it's one of those things where like there's going to be a ton of like Kyrie boos and stuff in game one?
I don't.
You don't think I meant like, do you think they're going to get it out of their system in game one, and then the basketball is just going to be so good that it's going to be like, oh, okay,
maybe
he's not saying anything. Like
my take on this, I said this on a Boston podcast I went on. I was like, I think Luka Doncic internalizes Kyrie Irving boos and goes fucking nuts.
I think by the end of the series, they're going to hate Luka way more than they hate
Kyrie. More. Like we're going to have whole Bill Simmons podcasts where he's just slowly dying on the inside. Because he doesn't really like watching Luka anymore, which is, that's actually not uncommon. But Luka is just playing with such what am I looking for? He's playing
theatricality.
No, but inevitability.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, there's like force of nature shit happening here with him. Like I went and rewatched the opening quarter of game 5 again.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, that's the sort of stuff, like there's this real cool clip when he was with Real Madrid and the older coach, I can't remember what his name was, like lit into him on the sideline about something. And then he goes out and drills 3 straight threes, just assassin stuff. And I just don't think the Celtics have been punched hard enough. I still think the Celtics are a great team, and we're going to circle back onto how we think about this series, but like they have not seen anything like Luka Doncic in 2 to 3 months. They just haven't.
No, they have not. That's going to definitely be a wake-up call for them in game 1, especially integrating KP back in. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking for, like, I want to see how Luka interacts with that Boston home crowd, because I think that's gonna be
like there's like wrestling shit there. Like you're a bigger fan than I am, or at least more recent fan than I am. But like Luka works the crowd as well as some of the top wrestlers. Like he obviously wouldn't be good on the mic like The Rock, but maybe he would. Maybe if he was allowed to curse and do like Luka's so I just love it so much when he gets going, because it's like I can't imagine. Rooting for him would be so upsetting. My friend Andrew Sharp has been an anti-Luka guy since the beginning of time, and he is just dying as he's watching this series. Like text threads where he's just like, I can't do this. I can't, because he's just so wrong about Luka and has been for 6 years, and it's so awesome watching people get upset over him. Well, we talked for too long. Why don't we start this show?
Okay. You want to talk about the basketball games?
Yeah, the actual basketball. Let's do it.
Okay. I'll start us off here. So my main point, and I talked about it on Twitter earlier today, is so as funny as it is about how Mavericks fans feel like a lot of national people are just now watching their team for the first time and not understanding just how great that this Mavericks team has been, since middle of February, start of February. So we're about 3 months of pretty sustained, excellent, elite level basketball. So in the same way that I think a lot of Mavericks fans were like screaming, like, how did you not see this coming? Like, this is not a fluke. This is a really good team. feel like there's like another thing happening where now like Mavericks fans or non-Celtics fans are like not really you don't have to appreciate or respecting the greatness of the Celtics team. Like there's a thought like because the Celtics have played some rough, they haven't played a great competition in the playoffs and they've had some weird looking games. At the end of the day, they're still they still rampage through the playoffs. They never got challenged. They never faced an elimination game. I don't think they lost. I think each of their series they won in 5. If I'm right, no 5. I think the first 2 were 5, and then a sweep against the Pacers. So, despite the fact everyone keeps saying they haven't played any competition, well, they've also kind of dominated for the most part. So they were they had the 4th best net rating of all time this season.
Contextualize that for me.
All time. I'm going to contextualize that for you because I'm going to look at the. Oh my gosh, I had it and then I lost it.
That's okay.
So let me.
It's like you say, like
no, because I want to name the other teams that they're in that list with.
Shout out to my guy Josh McSwain in the chat who said we talked for too long. We Kirk, meaning he's calling me out for running my mouth. Shout out Josh. Fair enough.
We're having fun. Okay, so their 4th all-time single season net rating, 11.6. Here are the 3 teams above them: the 96 Bulls, the 97 Bulls, and the 2017 Warriors, the first Warriors team.
So like 3 of the widely regarded best teams of all time.
And then the teams right below them, the 2016 Spurs, the 2008 Celtics, the 92 Bulls, the 1971 Milwaukee Bucks, the 2016-73 win Warriors, and then the 1972 Lakers. That's the top 10.
So
I didn't look that up, but I'm pretty sure every single team has won the title that year. No, except for the Warriors. Obviously, the 2016 Warriors did not, but they won 73 games,
right?
And then ran into like the greatness of LeBron and Kyrie Irving, which if you want to buy into that kind of stuff, there you go. So historically great, and I got some responses that were like, "Well, the East is trash," and I'm like, okay, sure.
You only play who's in front of you.
I don't see a lot of other East teams that dominated, that were a top 10 all-time team against this. If the East is so trash, where are all these other teams that have dominated it? And I guess you could say, well, they're all in the West, but still, like they can only play. They can play. Yeah. You can't fluke your way to that kind of season. Like it was a historically dominant season, and there's a lot of people that are like, why are the Celtics such heavy betting favorites? And I'm like, because they're the 4th. They posted the 4th greatest season of all time. Like that's just how it goes, and that's not disrespect to the Mavericks.
I've not looked at their playoff numbers, but
I got the playoff numbers.
Well, no, it's like their playoff record. So they've won 3 series and they won 64 games, right?
Right.
And so how many games have they lost so far in the playoffs?
Oh man, on the spot. Let me check.
It's okay. 2. I think they've lost twice.
Yeah, they've lost twice.
We're inching close to 100 games where they've won nearing 80 of them.
Yeah.
Like this is not like shit like this doesn't happen. Just like 76 and 20 total. Thanks, Mike. So it's like 4 more wins would put them directly at 100. Like we're this just doesn't just like the Mavericks, a 5 seed doesn't get to the finals
and like reform their team midseason.
Right. Teams like this don't lose in the finals, meaning the Celtics. So
right. And
I don't and that's where when Josh is talking about this is just like you can't hand wave and be like, this is more like the Celtics are really fucking good.
Yes, the Mavericks are rightfully the underdogs in this series, and rightfully, the heavy underdogs. And like I said, that's not a disrespect to the Mavericks, who I still think are an elite team within the context of the season. The difference is the Celtics are an elite team within the context of the history of the entire NBA. That's there's a difference there. And now, of course, they have to finish it off. But if they, just hypothetically, if they win the title, they win the finals, and especially so if they win in relatively short order, this will go down as one of the greatest seasons in NBA history. Like it just will. You can't finish top 4 net rating all time and then win a title and not be considered one of the all-time great single season teams. They just are. So that's what the Mavericks are up against. But that doesn't mean the Mavericks still have a chance. And we're going to talk. We're going to get into this. We're going to talk about why the Mavericks can still win. I just think everyone should understand that the Celtics are not kind of this fluky team that just preyed on a bunch of crappy teams. They are legitimately one of the most dominant teams that we've seen in a while. Now, here's what I looked up before we started recording. Sorry if now I'm the one who's talking too much. So everyone keeps talking about how the Celtics have looked kind of weird in the playoffs because they've had some close games against some of these inferior competition. They played the Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler. They played the Cleveland Cavaliers with Donovan Mitchell missing most of the series. Then they played the Indiana Pacers, who were really only in the Eastern Conference Finals because literally the entire New York Knicks roster fell apart. And then Tyrese Halliburton, their best player, left, I think, after the second or third game. After the second game. So
third game, I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. So they've literally
they might have played better defense without him around. The Pacers.
But so you say all that, and they've had to play some clutch games in the playoffs against teams that you're like, why are they even in the clutch game? Yep. Having said all that, their playoff net rating is 10.3.
Pretty good.
And here's comparison point. I'm going to go the last from 2016 to 2023. Here are the NBA champions playoff net ratings. So again, remember, currently the Celtics are 10.3. 2023 Denver 9.2. 2022 Golden State 5.7. 2021 Milwaukee 5.7. 2020 Lakers 9. 2019 Toronto 5.8. 2018 Golden State 10.6. 2017 Golden State 16. They went 16-1 in the playoffs. If y'all remember the first year with Kevin Durant. And then 2016 Cleveland 10.7. So better net rating in the playoffs than the last 5 NBA champions. And they are within the ballpark of the Kevin Durant Warriors, which might be the most dominant team in the last, 25, 30 years. Not even close. They boat raced the NBA with Kevin Durant.
Yep.
And they're basically on similar grounds to the 2016 Cleveland team that upset the 73-win Warriors, also considered one of the greatest regular seasons of all time. One of. So they're right up there, man. People keep saying they haven't looked great in the playoffs, and I understand the competition is really good, but they're still dominating. They are not squeaking by these games. This is a historically great team, regardless of any context you want to.
The criticism comes from the fact that they're not boat racing teams from the get-go. And I don't necessarily think that's fair because it's the playoffs. These guys are human. These other teams are playing hard. They've closed when it matters. And that's the part that has to stick with you. I mean, you watch some of these games, and I think you can say that there's openings for a team like the Mavericks.
Absolutely. They have weaknesses.
The Pacers absolutely shit the bed in 2 out of the first 3 games down the stretch in the clutch time. Do you think the Mavericks are going to do that if the game is close? I mean, that's where we'll circle back around to that, but that's where we're getting. So, you have on, like Josh used to write 5,000 word previews, and we realized that not as many people would read them as we would like. So now we turn these into podcast episodes. So Josh has kind of a really great outline here. And the next thing we're going to talk about is kind of looking at the two teams' bread and butter put together. So the Mavericks defense, which has been their calling card since the trade deadline, well, really since early March, and then against the Celtics offense. Yeah,
it's basically the best way I can sum it up. If you're watching the Mavericks defense versus Celtics offense from a broad, 30,000 feet view, is think of the Celtics offensively like Oklahoma City, but with experience. Same 5-out offense, spacing the floor with shooters 1 through 5.
Much more confident shooters.
But the difference is these guys have done it in the playoffs, much longer regular season track record, more experienced players. Oklahoma City was in the playoffs for the first time this season. A lot of these Boston players have played more finals games than, they've played more finals games than a lot of teams have played playoff games.
Yeah.
Like some of these rosters, they are well proven. They have that experience and they have that track record. So that's the way to think of it. Because you think about Oklahoma City and you're like, well, they had these good, Lou Dort career high, Chet Holmgren, a rookie who shot, but it's like, what's your track? What have you done in the playoffs? And guys like Drew Holiday, Derek White, Tatum, Brown, they have done it in the playoffs at least once or twice, even if they have come short on winning an NBA title. There's more confidence there. And there's also just a little bit more juice there because a guy like Lou Dort, sure, you're going to leave him wide open, but also you don't really care if he catches the ball wide open and does anything else but shoot, right? Like you don't worry about him taking you off the dribble or anything like that. So you can actually maybe close out a little harder on him, even if you do leave him out. Derek White, Drew Holiday are much more accomplished players with the ball in their hands. To say nothing of Tatum and Brown, who are also pretty good isolation players and closeout players. So that's the big difference. Is the Celtics also like to play 5 out like Oklahoma City, but they just have more proven shooters that make it a little hard to help. They're basically the antithesis of what the Mavericks want to defend, because what we've been talking about all playoffs, the Mavericks they don't want to give up the rim, they don't want to give up the paint. They wall it off better than I think any team right now in the NBA, aside from the Celtics, I think. I think those are the two best rim defending teams right now that are going. The Mavericks field goal percentage at the rim defense has been number 1 in the playoffs. Lively and Gafford have been outrageous. But the Celtics don't care, because 43.8% of their total shots in the playoffs are threes. They only get to the rim 28.9% of their total shots in the playoffs.
I mean, it's a math. Missoula, I don't have any quotes in front of me, but Missoula has approached this very openly about it being a math problem that the Celtics are here to break, and they're breaking it. Like that's just the fact.
Yeah. So if Dallas defensive philosophy is we're not giving up the rim, but we will be okay with the occasional 3 because we think that we can either funnel the ball so the open 3 is coming from a shooter we want to shoot it, or 2, we feel confident in our closeout because we've got 2 of the best rim protectors behind the closing out defender, and we feel confident that they can clean up whatever mistakes happen at the rim. Well, that's hard when Boston 1 has better closeout attackers, better shooters, and they don't care if they don't get to the rim, right? They want threes, like they want open threes. Like they have one of the best offenses in the NBA without getting into the paint and touching the paint that much. That can kind of bite them in the butt because, again, 3-point shot is not automatic. And eventually in a single game or a 5-minute stretch, if you go 1 for 5 from 3, there's a difference between shooting a pretty high percentage from 3 over the course of 82 games. We're now in a 7-game series. Small sample size matters. You can't just wave off, well, they just shot poorly from 3 today. That can kill you. You can't lose 2 games on bad cold shooting, because then you're behind the 8 ball. So you can't, you have to wave away the small sample size stuff. So that's the danger that Boston lives with. They could just get cold. Irregardless of what the Mavericks do, if they just miss shots that they should be making, because the 3-point shot can be so variable compared to a layup or a dunk, which is so much more sustainable. Those are basically automatic points. Players there's no variance to those shots. Boston does open themselves up to some weirdness. Now, to their credit, they're just so good everywhere else defensively, and their players are just so good individually talented that it hasn't bitten them in the butt. But if you're a Mavericks fan, that's what you're hoping for. They're not a heavy pick and roll team. Drew Holiday and Derek White are fine, but they don't do it a lot. They're not explosive as maybe like a Luka or a Kyrie. Tatum and Brown are improved playmakers, but you wouldn't put those guys in like the offensive fulcrum tier of like a Luka, SGA, Jokic.
Sure.
They just wear you down with they have quality. Like, I don't want to mean this as a dig.
Yeah, I mean, Tatum can
quantity
get
over quality.
Tatum is capable of like 2 and 3 game stretches where he looks like 6'11" Kobe Bryant. Right. The flip side of that is that there are also stretches where he can look like 6'11" Kobe Bryant, and I don't mean that in a positive way, where he's I heard that against the Warriors in 2022, he was 36% from the floor. Like, I don't expect that against Tatum has added a little bit every year, but he's still quite the dude. I think Mavericks fans have a lot of disdain for him, and I don't entirely understand why.
It's because of the Luka, like, where does he rank compared to Luka? And people get mad when people think Tatum is better than Luka. But Tatum's also played pretty poorly offensively in the playoffs. He's been okay making good reads and passes, but he's shooting pretty poorly.
They've been able to get turnovers, though.
Yes, that's the big thing for them.
To eat him alive.
And Brown.
Brown, because Brown used to have a dribble like my 8-year-old, and
he's the office Stanley, right?
Yeah, and he's gotten better, and Tatum's gotten better. So you're looking at really like pre-prime I mean, nearly. I mean, I don't know what you'd consider Tatum. He's been in the spotlight his entire career. But basically prime level guys getting another crack at the finals. So this is I don't know. I just expect a lot for them.
Yeah. And so without the pick and roll, they use their size, because that's another thing that you have to mention with Boston is, while they don't play a traditional power forward, like Tatum and Brown are kind of like their two wings, and then they play one big. So they basically play one big and then 4 perimeter players. But again, Tatum is huge. Like, this is going to be a weird reference if you've never seen the Netflix comedy show I Think You Should Leave. But there's a sketch that's really funny. That's like spoofing The Night Before Christmas, and it's really dumb, but it's really funny. And it's a guy talking about this giant skeleton monster, and he just goes, "He's huge," and it's like. Every time I think about Tatum, like I hear that clip in my head. He's huge because he's a big guy for a wing. Like,
there's a NBA All-Star thing where Lively was basically like getting to be kind of like a reporter, Dereck Lively, and he's talking to Tatum at one point because they both went to Duke. And Lively's fucking enormous, guys. Lively's a legit 7'1", and Tatum's standing there with him, and there ain't much difference. Like. Right. That's where it's one of those confusing things where some guys are just so much bigger than you think they are. Like Luka is bigger because he has shoulders like Rob Gronkowski, whereas most NBA players are very slight. Luka's very broad, and that makes him very difficult to defend for different reasons than somebody like Tatum.
Yeah, anyway. For sure. So they use that advantage, and even Derek White and Drew Holiday, they're not huge, but they're pretty big and long for guards. So they've got size everywhere, and they use it. So they like to post up, and that's kind of where they make up for the pick and roll. And I think let me see what I've got. So in the playoffs, they're second in post up frequency, 7.3%. They're averaging 1.13 points per possession in the postseason. No, sorry, that's the regular season. Postseason, it's been down. 0.96 points per possession. But that's basically without Kristaps Porzingis, and that's probably where we transition. Is KP is kind of like the swing player in this.
Can I give you a KP stat before you talked?
No, go ahead.
So, my man Dwight of the 21 going on 77 podcast said he looked into this. So I didn't do this math. Could be incredibly wrong. Okay, could be incredibly wrong. But I believe him because he puts in the work and he's a smart guy. Kristaps Porzingis, upon coming back from any 5-game or more stretch, shoots 32% from 3 or worse from the floor during the next 6 games of his playing. Such a specific series of numbers, which really makes me think that Dwight was like, I'm listing out all this man's seasons and I'm looking at all of this. Because like Dwight was a big KP defender. Like he likes KP. But it is true, like we watched it ourselves. Like
part of why he got traded.
Porzingis comes back looking like the giant skeletons they sell at Costco, or at Home Depot. Like it's a different deal.
That was part of why Mavericks traded him, because they were tired of the off again, on again. Like he works his way, he gets hurt, comes back, needs like a week to feel himself out, get his legs back under him, plays well for 10 days, then knee soreness, he's out, and you just rotate the cycle. And the Mavericks were tired of that cycle, and that's why they traded him.
He's not had that in Boston though.
Right. Yeah, credit to KP. He's been much healthier. And of course, he misses 2 playoffs. He misses the second round and the third round, but we'll see. So that's the big thing. Like, it's hard for us to predict this series because we just don't know what level we know that he's starting and playing game 1, but what KP are we going to see? Like, this is a long layoff. He hasn't played basketball in a long time, and we've known like you said, historically, and you said those numbers about how he shoots after a long layoff. Historically, it's not great.
Well, this is also quite literally different basketball than he's ever played before. He's played fewer playoff games than Dereck Lively.
That is a stat.
Yeah, he's played 14. Lively's played 16.
That is quite the stat. So that's huge. And the reason why it's so huge is because in the regular season, I mean, when I was looking up these numbers before we started, because I knew he was having a good season, but we're not Boston bloggers, we're not Boston podcasters, so I'm not looking at this stuff all the time, and I'm not watching him every game. So when I looked this stuff up, I was kind of shell shocked how like everyone said he was good.
But he's been great. It's really fucking annoying. He's been great. Like, It's part of why I went on this Boston show and it's like people are like, oh, are you guys still mad at Porzingis? It's like, I'm not mad at the guy's for his body. He wanted to play. It's like we started to get into this in the show the other night. He and the Mavericks were completely full of shit in how they dealt with his injuries.
What do you mean?
They nobody was candid about how fucked up he was.
Oh, yeah.
We're watching the guy, and so now there's all this revisionist history that Luka was an asshole when the poor guy was like shuffling around dragging one leg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. So this season, now these are regular season. No, I didn't look up his playout because he did play 4 games in the Miami series, but I'm not, 4 games, whatever. So these are all regular season numbers. 15th in total post-ups. He shot 62.3%.
Take that, Rick Carlisle.
He shot 62.3% on the 15th.
How far away were those post-ups? Do you know?
I don't have that.
Distance? That'd be a curious thing for me.
Well, I can kind of guesstimate because I got some more numbers that kind of lean into that. So that's 1.3 points per possession. Like 1.3 points per possession on a post-up. Like that's like you're not getting far away from like pick and roll roll man finisher numbers at 1.3. Yep. Like, and that's a way more efficient play. So 96th percentile, he was incredible. Tatum in the regular season, by the way, 16th in total post ups. So
Boston really likes them. Yeah. They have a lot. They have some interesting post up
because they can't pick. Because they can't. They're leaning in their strength. They're big and they can shoot. They can shoot from all over the floor, but they can't run pick and roll. So why do it? Just lean into your strength. And Tatum, it was 52.4% shooting on post-ups in the playoff. In the regular season, 41.5% in the playoff. So that's a number you're going to need to watch in this series. But going back to KP, more comfortable in the post against switches. He's taking flat-footed bigs off the dribble facing up. He's not letting smaller defenders bully him away to take those long mid-rangers. Here were the numbers that really got me. Now the post-up numbers are crazy. He's KP this season shooting 50.9, so that's 51% in the paint outside the restricted area. League average is 44%. 174 attempts this season. Here, that's 23% of his total shots. He only took 72 mid-range shots this season. And he played a decent amount of games this season. So, he played more regular season games, I think. I don't know how many he played exactly, but he, it's not like he didn't miss like 40 or 45 games. He played. Here's what this was in Dallas. In the paint, outside the restricted area, attempts. Let's see. 194 in 2020, and that's, with Rick Carlisle. 2021, 134. 2022, before he got traded, 103.
Yep.
Oh, no. Oh, my gosh. Sorry. Scratch that. Let's reverse. Sorry. So he had 174 in the paint, outside the restricted area attempts. 72 mid-range shots. Here are his mid-range shots in Dallas. So mid-range, 2020, 194, 2021, 134, 2022 before the trade deadline, 103. So drastically cut down on his mid-range jumpers, drastically improved his in the paint outside the restricted area attempts, and drastically improved his percentage from there. Because here was his non-restricted area paint field goal percentage in Dallas. 2020, 34%. 2021, 43%, 2022, 45%. He's at 51% this season. So like you were wondering about like what's the average distance on those post-ups. I don't have that stat for you, but considering he's taking significantly more shots in the paint than at any point in the last 4 years, and he's taking significantly less mid-range shots at any point in the last 4 years, I'm guessing a lot of those post-ups are closer to the rim than they've ever been than they were in Dallas.
That's fascinating. Because the thing about this is, guys, the Mavericks couldn't get KP to go there. They couldn't get him to go there into the paint. Like they couldn't get him to pick and roll, which is fine. I'm okay with that in hindsight because it's a little bit dangerous with a guy like that. But he wanted to post up at like 17 feet.
Yeah. And then he would shoot a jumper. Like he
would turn around and shoot a jumper, and Marcus Smart would embarrass the shit out of him or something like this. Like, this is more than a transformation. This is something actually really kind of probably like largely underreported. And if the Celtics are able to beat the crap out of the Mavericks, that will be a big part of why.
Right. Like he has to be healthy. He has to feel comfortable. Like if they don't get this version of KP, this regular season one who's shooting 50%.
I'm sure our listeners are like, what are you guys like? How the fuck are we supposed to win? You guys are just like beating the shit out of the like We're really like blowing the Celtics right now, but they're good.
Well, they're good. And here we're gonna get there. So we're gonna get there. But we have to talk about this stuff because we have to like this is why they're that good. Like we're not just blowing smoke up your ass. Like we have to get into this because this is what you're gonna see what the Celtics are gonna try to do. I think with Horford, I feel like there's a narrative that like maybe there's been a drop off. There hasn't. Starters net rating with Horford in the playoffs is 19.2. That's pretty good in about 400 possessions or so. He's still a willing shooter, 5.63 attempts per game in the playoffs, only shooting 34% on threes, but his attempt, like the 5.6 attempts are big. Like Chet didn't shoot a lot in the Mavericks series. Horford will get them up. He does have a slower release. So what do you think about how the Mavericks guard when it's KP versus when it's Horford? Because my thought is when it's Horford, because he does have that slower release, and I don't think you're scared of Horford post-ups like you are KP post-ups now.
I mean, it's a different level of respect to give him.
Yeah. Do you think that the Mavericks will be like, okay, let's let Lively Gafford guard Horford, and then when it's KP, let's put Gafford Lively on a wing and put PJ on KP? Like, how do you see that? Like, how do you see how the Mavericks defend KP versus Horford?
The last thing that you said, where you put like a wing on KP, is what they'll do.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I want Lively on him. Bobby Corral and I talked a little bit about the I don't know, the Pokemon evolution of Dereck Lively, where it's just every couple of weeks there's a new iteration that's bigger than better. And he and I last talked about the Maverick defense in January, and I was questioning why the Mavericks didn't want to let Lively guard in space because I thought he had the feet. And there were games this year, like Miles Turner really roasted Lively because he's a great shooter, and Lively just is a 20-year-old, probably hadn't defended that many 7-footers who can shoot.
Yes.
And right. I want Lively to have some time on it because, all this is, it's a learning on the job experience. And if you're thinking, PJ being under him or Lively being in his grill, give me both.
Yeah. And I think we saw in that Minnesota series, I'm trying to find the clips. I've been trying to find the clips all day and I can't find it. There were a couple of possessions in the Minnesota series when Lively was guarding the pick and roll against Ant and like played on the ball.
Ant was stymied. Yes. Ant was like, I need to go back to the lab and figure some shit out. It was rough.
We haven't seen Lively play that far up in the pick and roll, I feel like, all season. And then you bust it out in the Western Conference Finals against Anthony Edwards. Makes me wonder if they're going to do what you've been saying and give Lively a shot against KP and let him see if he can get to those pick and pops.
I mean, my sort of question is like, what's the worst that can happen? I don't know. I mean, the worst that can happen to me, and you see this Mike, who's a Celtics fan in the chat, just listening in on the show. He's talking about how Porzingis' threes are usually like 28 to 30 feet from the hoop, and it's exactly right. I remember that same shit in Dallas.
It's hard to ground. It's a lot of ground to cover.
It's a lot of ground to cover, and guys are like, particularly big guys, are naturally like it's just not in your veins to be able to get it. Like your brain doesn't compute. You're like, I'm not going to go guard out there. I'm not supposed to go guard out there. I'm going to guard the rim. Like I'm doing it right now with the 8-year-olds I'm teaching, where I'm like, never let anybody between you and the rim. And it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna stay here. But I still would rather see Lively do it because
that wingspan.
PJ commits asinine fouls. Like that's kind of a low, we're talking defensive specific stuff. Like PJ is an extremely important defender who does like 2 things a game that are like junior varsity Karl Townsend.
I was about to say he has like 1 or 2 cat fouls every
swap. Like what are you doing? It's like it's a rebound and you slap the guy 94 feet from the hoop. Like stop that.
But then when he's engaged, when this playoff run, otherwise he's been outside of those silly fouls, he's been incredible.
Well, and we get the chat is now, I can tell the chat is now like, all right, you guys have been talking about these guys for a while. Let's keep going. Then we got to flip to the Mavericks offense.
Okay, well, all right. Well, one more point on the defense. So we talked about if they're going to put a big on one of the perimeter players, who do you put him on? I think it's probably going to be Drew Holiday. If anyone remembers, there was a nationally televised regular season game, Denver and Boston. Denver beat Boston in the clutch. They put Jokic on Drew Holiday, and the Boston offense died on a vine. I don't know if you guys remember that game. I probably need to look it up. But Holiday just did not look like he was prepared for that, or he didn't really make plays based off of it, and Denver won the game. He didn't punish Jokic at all. and Lively and Gafford are more athletic than Jokic. So Drew Holiday is also kind of an X factor because what do I have down here in the notes? So he's a career 34% playoff shooter. So
I'm sorry, but his corner 3-point shooting turns me into a lunatic.
Very good. But 39% in these playoffs, he was 31% or lower every season playoffs in Milwaukee.
Well, that's why the Bucks fans hated him, because he was cast as like the second option and he just couldn't do it.
Yeah. So Mavericks are probably going to bet on Holiday being streaky. And if you watch that Denver game, I should try to find it and post it somewhere, but that's what they did. And it looked pretty good. And then, PJ versus KP in the post, like that'll be fun to watch. If PJ can stay out of foul trouble, I think that's going to be a battle, but we can move on to the offense now.
Just to think, because all right, so we're 40 minutes into the show, and I'm just going to do an ad insertion right here, just because that's just the natural place you would want to insert ads. Anybody that's listening, please go ahead and give us a subscription. We really appreciate it. We're close to we passed 3,000 subs earlier. That was my goal for the year, was 5, but I completely made that up, and I have no idea what YouTube metrics are. But we grow a little every show. Very appreciate the folks that are hanging out in here. We will go live after every single Boston Celtics Mavericks game, though Josh is at it, game 3 or game 4, maybe both. We're not sure. And we will figure out what the heck we're doing with that, whether it'll be immediate or whether I will go live with somebody else. After every finals game, also, there will be a second element to our post-game live show where you can come hang out and talk basketball with me. I am still sort of physically reeling from the 3+ hour show that we did following the Mavericks winning against the Wolves in game 5, but it was incredible. There were I think 50 or 60 people must have came up and talked. We have a new goal of getting a single woman to come talk basketball with us. Though I think, we might have had one, but she didn't show her face, which is perfectly fine. Don't mind it. But I had one of my, have I told you this story, Josh? Like at one of my son's basketball practices, I met a woman who was like, "Oh, I listened to your show." She's like, "How come there aren't more women on the show?" And I'm like, "Because more women don't come talk."
Yeah, you're open.
Right. I'm open to it. And I'll move them to the front of the line, because basketball is a sport for everybody. All right, and then if you're listening on the YouTube, or if you're listening on the audio stream, please give us a sub. I want to give one quick shout out. I noticed this in the comments. There was a nice guy by the name of, where did it go? Gosh, somebody left us $100 tip on the comments, or €100 tip on the comments the other day, and I cannot find it. Why can't I find this? He knows who he is. He's, but I just wanted to shout out his name, and now I can't find the comment. That's just the way this stuff goes. Let me try one more time, see if it's in here. This is just the worst. Well, I'll find it later. But we're really appreciative of the tips we get. Shout out to Will Pengilly, who left us $5 a little bit earlier. This has been a great month for that sort of thing. Makes it worth it for Josh and I. We're very grateful for the community that we have. All right, I'm going to insert some audio ads at 44-minute mark. Just brilliant by me. And then we'll be right back. Mm-hmm. All right. We will be back. And so, Josh, let's talk a little bit about the other side of the ball, because that's the side that is very, it's very interesting to me, because the one thing that I want to know before we talk about the Celtics is that the Timberwolves were, I think, on defensive rating, the better defense over the course of the NBA season. And then against the Mavericks, they tried at one point there. I saw this video that walked through the 8 different coverages they tried against Luka on the pick and roll. That blows my fucking mind. 8 different coverages. And so the Celtics are, I think, as well equipped as it's a leveling up process. You got the corpse of Kawhi and Paul George and some of those guys from the Clippers guarding Luka, who wasn't in great shape. You had Lou Dort trying to commit assault in 36 states against Luka for the Thunder. You had Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, who are just not the right body types to guard Luka. And now you have the Celtics, who have different, more experienced variations of all different archetypes to guard Luka. And I just can't help but think, and I want you to hear your thoughts on this, The Celtics play like 7 guys.
Yeah.
Like the Mavericks play more guys than the Celtics. Like I sort of wonder if they like. I think one of the Mavericks' best chance in this series is getting some of the Celtics in foul trouble.
Yeah, for sure. They basically play their starters plus Horford, and then they'll play Peyton Pritchard a little bit. They'll play Sam Hauser, but those guys aren't playing heavy minutes. We talked about that against OKC and the Minnesota series about how the Mavericks technically have the depth advantage, and we'll see if that matters. And I think that mattered a little bit in the Minnesota series for sure. The Minnesota just didn't have anyone to turn to off the bench. The Mavericks got like random Jaden Hardy. Like you need random games from these guys, even if it's
We're talking about those Jaden Hardy games until the end of time.
We are. If they win this series, he's going to be like
who's the guy that Doyle loves? Played at University of Florida.
Corey Brewer. Who had that crazy game.
He's going to be like legend status, like Brewer. Yeah,
yes, for sure. But yeah, the Mavericks, the Celtics defense, I mean, it's good. KP was excellent at the rim. The thing is they are the thing that's funny about Minnesota is you said they played so many coverages. The Celtics don't do that a lot. I mean, I could be wrong. I think there's a Boston guy in our chat who can definitely correct me, but from what I gathered, doing research, is the Celtics, like with their bigs, they like to play drop, like pretty conservative drop too. They like to keep Horford and Porzingis near the rim in the paint as much as possible. They're much more willing to switch 1 through 4 because White, Holiday, Tatum, Brown, like those are 4 fantastic defenders, and they're all big, they're all long, they're all athletic. So the Celtics don't mind switching those at all. But they don't like to switch their bigs too much, and they like to play drop with their bigs. And we've seen the Mavericks kill drop coverage. Like Luka Doncic absolutely obliterated drop coverage against Minnesota, and that's why Minnesota had to play so many different coverages, because he was killing their primary drop with Gobert, that they were like, well, we got to try something else because we can't keep letting this dude make a billion floaters every game or catch Lively and Gafford catch a zillion lobs. So it's going to be interesting to watch the Celtics try to play the pick and roll 2-on-2 and see what the Mavericks do to kind of bend them or break them or get them out of that comfort. Because the Celtics don't give up corner threes, and that's one of the biggest, your strength versus my.
But if you don't give up corners, if you don't give up corner threes, so you're staying at home on those shooters, you have to give ground somewhere.
Right. You would think, but they are only 25% of opponent shots at the rim, lowest among playoff teams. Fewest share corner threes, 6.9% of opponent shots.
Okay.
The rim, so the floater range, right? That's the answer for the Mavericks, right? Is Luka making a billion floaters?
Which
that's simple, but
I mean, if you go look at the Mavs Wolves series, he decided to become like the world's most insane. I mean, he hit one over Rudy. Rudy's standing there right in front of him, and he just does a little over the top of Rudy that I thought Rudy was going to swat into next year, and it just drops over Rudy's outstretched arm. And I mean this with love. Porzingis is not Rudy. Al Horford is going to be in trouble if
that's who they're going to try to pick
if Luka starts going. Now, I one of the things I keep going back to, and I debate with people about this all the time. I've said this on multiple shows. A lot of people think that Luka is the second coming of Harden. Number one, James Harden didn't shoot a fucking mid-range shot in his life. So let's just throw that whole comparison out the window. Luka shoots a lot of mid-range. He likes it. Second thing, Luka likes making the extra pass. Luka likes making the right pass. He likes making the corner read. He likes making the lob. And I just think that someone's going to have to my sort of take on this is the Mavericks need to come out and absolutely punch the Celtics in the mouth by going to these things that are available to them and not do the feel out shit. Where if Luka plays game 1 and with a similar attitude like he played game 5, you put Boston on their heels and change the math of the series. And I know we're not quite there yet, but this is the offensive element that I've just been thinking about, where Luka and Jason Kidd like to sort of feel things out, and I just don't think you have the time against the Celtics. Like, you cannot get behind the 8 ball against the Celtics. You're not going to come back.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. They have to take advantage of what the Celtics are going to give them and not try to beat the Celtics at what they're best at. You know what I mean? So the Celtics are going to play 2-2 in the pick and roll, and they don't hide. They don't help from the corners. They don't give up corner threes. So they're going to be okay. And Kirk, I think every single playoff series and a lot of post-game pods in the regular season, we have said that we think the best way to guard Luka, and the best way to guard Luka, by the way, because this tactic lets Luka score like 70 points, is basically to don't help off the role players in the pick and roll. You do 2-on-2. You let Luka shoot as many pull-up threes, and you let Luka shoot as many mid-range floaters and mid-range shots as you want. You let Luka score 70 points like he scored 73 points against the Atlanta Hawks. And you don't give up space to any of the role players who need a little bit more space to get their shot off than superstar. Because why would you give PJ Washington a wide open shot when those are the shots you want? Like, why would you give Derrick Jones Jr. a wide open shot when that's the most successful attempt for him? Like, if you cover Derrick Jones Jr., he is not going to run a pick and roll and roast you. He's not going to isolate you and break down a weaker defender. Like, that's just not his game. PJ can do a little bit of that in the post. So we'll see if he does that. But Boston's got so many big players, it's going to be tough. So if you stay home on all the role players and you just dare Luka to outscore you, we've seen the Mavericks lose games where Luka scores like 40 points or 35 points or more, but the other role players combine for like 25 or something. But the thing is coaches have a particular brain about them. Because this is what every team has done in the playoffs against Luka, and they've started it, and then Luka kills them, and the coaches go, "Oh shit, I can't let Luka."
I mean, like Chris Finch almost hurt himself again because he was so upset because to me it's just every coach has a game plan until they meet Luka Doncic.
Because it's easy for us to say from our chairs, just let Luka score 70. Talk to an NBA coach and ask him, would you like an NBA player to score
like they start to get twitchy? But I do think like if you're limiting him to 38 and 5 assists, I think
that's how you
that game.
That's how you beat Dallas. But will Missoula be okay with that when it's the third quarter and the Mavericks make a 10-2 run because Luka scores 9 points and they cut the lead to 5 or they cut the deficit to 5? Like, that's where we're going to see, like, can they stick to their principle and be like, okay, we're just going to stick to it? Or
we trust our process. We're going to keep going.
And the Mavericks scare them out of that and get them out of their comfort zone. That's going to be huge. And then also, you mentioned this earlier, and it was in the notes, and I appreciate you calling this out, is if the Celtics aren't going to help in the pick and roll off the corner because they don't want to give up the corner, who's going to guard the lob man? Lively and Gafford have to punish the Celtics for not helping and digging in from the corner. They have to find a way to get those guys lobs because yes, Luka can floater you to death, but really the ball starts getting rolling when you open up those Gafford Lively lobs because that coaches don't want that. Like they definitely don't want that. Like they're going to play 2-on-2 in the pick and roll, but they don't want Lively. They want Luka shooting a contested 15-footer. They don't want Gafford and Lively dunking 16, 12 combined times a game. So that's what I think is going to be how you break and not bend the Celtics defense. And I think that's how you might get them to reconsider, oh man, Lively's got, 4 dunks in this half. Maybe we do need to bring a guy in from the corner. And then once you do that, then it's all downhill from there. And you get the Celtics rotating and you get them in the blender a little bit in a way that they aren't really comfortable with because they haven't needed to do that because their defense is so good. They've been able to get away with it. So get away with it. That's a weird way to say it. Because they've imposed their will defensively, they don't have to do that. So it's going to be really crucial for Gafford and Lively to be vertical threats, and they need to punish the Celtics for not helping in off the corners.
Well, and I have kind of I went on like I'll tell you my series preview or my series what do you call it? My how many games I thought the series would go went on Portland earlier, but I made the comment that I sort of think that Lively and Gafford dunks, like the Mavericks are making so many alley-oops off of Luka and Kyrie passes, that to me it has the same psychological effect. Maybe not the exact same, because Steph Curry threes from the North Pole are really, really vexing. But I think these dunks that Luka are feeding these guys really break. Like it's so
break
crazy.
Their spirits.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
So
because it's, coaches are going to drive, it's the most reliable shot in basketball is a dunk or a layup. So you want to take those away as much as you can. And then the other thing is Luka has to make threes, right? Like we can talk about so much. If Luka makes 45% of his threes in this series, everything we just talked about almost doesn't matter. The Mavericks can win the championship, right?
43% is so stupid.
In the Western Conference Finals, he's shot 43%. If he does that in this series, I think the Mavericks will win the championship.
Yeah.
He has to make those threes because the Celtics will, I don't know if they want to give it to him, but he's going to have opportunities in the pick and roll against Horford and KP. Potentially. Now, maybe the Celtics do switch, and I think we've got a Celtics guy, very, very nice Celtics man in the chat who said that they experimented with KP switching a little bit this season, and it worked okay. So maybe they do that. But if they're going to drop like they've dropped for most of the season, Luka has to make pull-up threes. He just has to. If they want to win this series, he has to make threes. And we've often seen the Mavericks can break, like that's like the ace in the hole, right? If Luka makes threes, almost everything else we talk about is irrelevant. The Mavericks are going to win.
Yeah. No, it's and Tim Legler talked about it's either on, I don't know, I've been listening to a lot of All NBA catching up, but Tim Legler is obviously an amazing shooter. And one of the things he talked about recently was how when you're injured, you have different release points when you're trying to get the ball off. And where he's just back to his regular season shooting form. And it's just kind of at a different release point. Jared Dubin, my friend, he writes a blog called Last Night in Basketball, talked about how Luka does not need space to get the shot off. Like the step back is more of a sort of part of his motion that he feels comfortable with. But he doesn't need it anymore. Now, I mean, look at what there's the exception of the rule, like when he gets one off against like Rudy Gobert, but if he's being guarded by somebody who's like 6'7", he doesn't care that shooter is there. So yeah, it's wild. Like I just don't know how to properly contextualize the 3-point shooting, man, because how did Kyrie shoot in the last series? Am I off my rocker here?
Oh man, I don't even have that. Let me see.
No, it's okay.
I think he did. No, it won't take me long. I think he did shoot well because he had like 3 30-point games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he had that 36-point game in Game 5. That's another big thing. We
didn't even talk about like you don't even have Kyrie in the thing here. How dare you?
Sorry. I think I mentioned I have one thing is that Kyrie's off-ball movement is going to be crucial because I think they're going to need to run around some of these guys and get them out of the Celtics out of their comfort zone. Because Kyrie's off-ball movement is a game changer because I really think his off-ball presence is like we talk about, like it's nearing. It's not there yet because Steph is kind of one of one, but the next tier down is definitely like Kyrie's tier. Like in terms of freaking teams out with his off-ball movement and willingness to move off the ball. Like that's such a big thing because like NBA games are hard. Like these guys are running so many miles on defense, coverages and transition and spacing the floor, like to then ask your superstar player, not ask because I think Kyrie likes to do it, but for your superstar player to then be like, yeah, I'm going to run around a bunch of screens all day and get these guys tired. Like that's such an advantage. So he's going to need to be a threat off the ball. He shot 37.5% from 3 on about 6.5 attempts in the Western Conference Finals. Very hot, cold. He had a game where he was 0 for 3, and then a game where he was 1 for 6. And then the other games, 4, 3, and 4 made 3-pointers in the other 3 games. So that he'll have to make 3. Like, the Mavericks will have to make threes. Luka and Kyrie will have to make 37% or more of their threes combined. I think that's like a good number for the Mavericks to win.
Sure. Oh, brother. I can't wait, man. That's not true. We talked about how at the beginning of the show that we can wait. I'm really excited all the same.
Yeah, I want to see the chess match. Like, I think there's going to be a chess match series because it's so much like our strength is taking away your strength. Like, there's so much of that on both ends of the floor. Like, I'm just curious, like, which one wins out? Like, which strength wins out over the other?
And which coach bends first?
Yes.
I was exchanging messages with one of the high school coaches in the area I talked to, and he said to me, he's like, well, I think the Mavericks, or I think Celtics send two at Luka. I was like, they've not done that all year. Like why would they, like, abandoning your defensive principles is the thing you cannot do.
Right.
Carlisle was the first person. When did Carlisle insert Barea? Game 2 or game 3?
I think he started game 3.
Okay, so the Mavericks had to rally back from down a gajillion points in game 2 to come back and win this. And they knew they needed a different spark because and it's just but the series was tied 1-1. We knew that when Mark Daigneault sort of caved against his entire process against the Mavericks, where he finally pulled Josh Giddey, and because he'd been bouncing around with that, like, I think we knew that the Mavericks had him.
Right. He took so long. He took so long to pull him.
Which coach sort of bends first, and Mazzulla is very married to his process, which is very different from Kidd's, quite simply. And Kidd, Kidd tried every single Mavericks guard that they had in the last series until, somebody finally stuck. So whoever bends first, and when they bend or when they change, from a coaching or analysis point of view, is going to be really interesting to me.
Yeah, same here, because the Mavericks haven't had to adjust from their game plan in any of these series, really, because they've imposed their will so forcefully against the Clippers and the Wolves and the Thunder. Like, teams haven't been able to break this. We're going to take away we're going to take away your rim, and we're going to dare you to beat us with threes and variance and all that stuff. And teams haven't been able to punish them for that. I'm not saying you can, like, it's not easy, because the rim is the most reliable shot in basketball. So the Mavericks haven't had to play outside their comfort zone in the playoffs because they've just been so good. So yeah, I am curious, like, what's it going to, they've only trailed in these series when it's been game after game 1. Like, after game 1 in these series, it's either been tied or they're winning the series. They haven't been trailing after 3 games or after 2 games or after 4 games. So if that happens, which is not a crazy, Celtics are really good, what's it going to look like if they're down 3-2? Or what's it going to look like when they're down 2-0? Because they haven't been in those scenarios in the playoffs yet. So we're going to have to see what that looks like.
I'm pretty pumped to be here. I can't really figure out how we're gonna make all this fit, make all this work, but it should be a good time. We have a ton of stuff coming at Mavs Moneyball tomorrow in the next few days. Like a ton of stuff. And then my boss keeps inserting stuff from SB Nation into our layout. So, if you're looking for different writers, different takes, that sort of thing, head over to mavsmoneyball.com. If you want to find us on the internet, ignore, where I am. I got all, I tend to talk to everybody, even the people who really don't like me, which, it's always fun. It's like, guys, this is like such a great time to be a Mavs fan. Like, the likelihood that we get back to the finals statistically pretty high. You got Luka Doncic, but it's not like you're expecting it to happen a majority of the years. This is an unexpected thing and one of the toughest conferences in sports. So I think everybody should just really try to soak it all in and have a little fun with it, right?
Yeah, for sure. Do we want to do predictions?
Oh yeah, I said I'm drunk with power. I said Mavs in 5.
You're sticking to it?
No, I mean, their predictions. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. Who cares?
No, I feel bad because a lot of people want my prediction after the Timberwolves thing. They're like, oh, what's it going to be now? And I think I'm leaning Celtics in 7. But if KP does not look like KP, it is Mavericks in 6. That's for sure. So if you want to give me Celtics in 7, if everyone's fully healthy, although Celtics in 5 or 6 wouldn't surprise me because the Celtics are really freaking good. But if KP looks weird and does, if this is like a Kawhi Leonard situation where he starts game 1 and it's like you don't look right, and he's not a factor as much as he could be, then I think the Mavericks take the series for sure. I think they'll take it at 6. They'll close it out at home, their first closeout championship.
Yeah,
that's if KP is being
no. I had a ridiculous take online. That Kyrie Irving's play is going to be so magical that the Mavericks will win Game 7 on the road in Boston. He will be crowned MVP, and then he'll give a speech, which will result in the Boston crowd clapping like at the end of Rocky IV. Where they all just come around and they're like, yeah, for everybody, that's,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's look, man, some of these series are not good because styles make fights and sometimes the things don't work out well, but this is such an interesting one. Like, this is a good finals.
This is this is especially after last, man, I feel like we haven't had a good, we've had some good finals. 2022 was pretty good, but the last season's like Denver Heat Miami was just weird.
Yeah.
So this will be fun. This will be very, very fun.
Yeah.
Be tight.
All right. Well, Mavs in 5. And what did you say?
I said Celtics in 7 if KP's healthy, and then if KP's not healthy, Mavs in 6.
Oh, boo.
I know I'm hedging.
Fuck.
I'm sorry.
It's fine.
Look, when you get arrested,
if you really want Mavs in, I'm sure
Xavier.
Well, I'm sure Xavier over at Mavs Moneyball is going to be like Celtics in 4. And then I'll have to yell at him and be like, dude, stop saying these things. Everyone yells at me for your takes. It's my great thing. One thing I will get a note for this. So I'm noticing some comments. G-Spec in the says, for the love of God, Josh, buy a good
I have
mic.
the exact same damn microphone as Kirk. I've adjusted it. I don't know what's going on.
Again, like we're amateur hour around here. I'm not going to sit here and act like we're like professionals. Like, we try to have a good time, but like, if you know stuff about this and you think we're fucking things up, please let us know. I don't mind. I read most of the, you can find emails and you can find that sort of thing. Like, we wonder if the gain on Josh's mic is wrong. I also think the fact that we record in these bigger rooms isn't great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in a situation where sound is going to be great, and it's just the way it is with our living
situation. Like, when you're making a point, sometimes you will pull away from the mic.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
And maybe that's what we're talking about.
I need to get a boom mic, so it's just always like right here.
Just right here in your face. No, we're not professional enough for that. All right. To all the lovely commenters, thank you so much for hanging out. This has been Kirk and Josh. We will be back Thursday night at some point, probably right after tip-off or right after the game ends. Yeah. I'm looking forward to writing about the series and seeing what else I can get out of it, because watching basketball is fun. Everyone have a great day, great week, and let's go Mavs.